America! Fuck yeah! Oh yeah, we are here. It is a 4th of July weekend. Woo! It is hot as heck outside. It is hot as hell as it gets. And it's like July in July out there. That's all I'm saying. You know, it is hot, and we are ready to go. And it is a 4th of July weekend. Happy birthday, America, with a capital M. We are here. We've come down into the steam tunnels to try and get away from the heat that is sweltering us in our native Boston territory. Settling on in once again into a wonderful birthday for America, where, you know, let's face it, clean air and clean drinking water are for snowflakes only. Like that's apparently just the case. Real Americans don't need that. We've just been told so. Without a doubt, with absolutely no gray area in that, right? So, you know, we're gonna have some cookouts, and we're gonna eat a good helping of lead, and we're gonna enjoy it. Maybe have a second helping of lead just to wash it down, right? Am I right, Star Child?
Absolutely, man. You know, oxygen's for bitches.
And it just, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if it, you know,
carbon-based life forms.
Yeah, what? Real Americans don't need water.
No.
Okay.
It's got electrolytes.
If you can't, if it's got electrolytes, if you can't, you know, if you can't see the air, or if it's not the same color as the water, should you fucking trust it? That's what I'm saying here.
What it means is you ain't doing enough mudding, son.
Yeah. I'm sitting right here in that group of people that's totally okay with what just happened to the EPA, because it was already too late. So don't.
There we go. Good time.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It was already too. It's already too late. Like, you know what? Good. Have a picnic. You know, go to that barbecue, have a drink, because it's not gonna happen.
You know, of all the damn things that get rebooted, I noticed they're staying as far away as possible from Captain Planet. They are not touching that whatsoever. They're like, yeah, you know what, Captain Planet, he lost.
Yeah. It would basically be Captain Planet walking across the screen going, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. I'm out.
Or actually, what would be an awesome Captain Planet reboot is that he's actually working for one of like the villains from the original series.
He could be a shill. Yes, I could totally see him being
like,
a
my man's
shill.
got bills. He's totally broken down. You know, he's got like 3 kids, and he only likes 2 of them. He's not sure about one of them. You know.
No, it's just no. It could just be him crying with Greta Thunberg.
I kind of see him. I kind of see him coming out, walking across the street, right, and then, you know, an Exxon exec and an Amazon exec, and, you know, one other, you know, all of a sudden come out, and they, you know, friggin' kneecap him, and then, you know, put his head on the curb and fucking curb stop him, right? The end.
All right, you know what?
That's that.
Hollywood, here you go. You get another one for free from me. Here you go. Captain Planet reboot. He doesn't have his powers because the world is completely polluted. But some kids figure out how to get his powers back, and the government finds out too. So you spend a movie chasing out Captain Planet until finally it gets at the end. You're lucky. You're happy. You're welcome, Hollywood. Go ahead and print that money.
There you go. Again, you know, the Steam Gentleman, TSG, bringing it out here. You heard the treatment here first. So when somebody rips it off from us, you owe us money. That's just the way it is. But it is, in fact, again, the Steam Gentleman. We have converged. You've heard from all of our members. You know, but I still want to say hi. Still want to see how everyone's doing. Let's take it on over to 3 of Clubs. How are you doing on this? You know, we're on this 4th of July weekend. We're recording a little earlier than we usually do.
What it do? How do you do? I'm doing well. I hope everyone else is as well. And to be clear and transparent with our TSG fan base, I wanted to talk about blowing shit up, eating processed food, and getting absolutely hammered the American way for the 4th of July episode, but I was vetoed. So I guess we'll talk about whatever else is going to come.
All right. Well, you know, I mean, I'm halfway there on the first part. I do have a brisket ready to go.
Wait, you blew some shit up?
No, I'm just, drinking. So, we're already here. I think we already got the alcohol on tap. So, we're good. We're good right there. Right. And, I'm ready to blow some shit up. What the hell? I mean, why not? As they say,
it's the American way, baby.
The guy with 3 fingers and an eye patch, he always sells the best fireworks. You know that. That guy does not fuck around. There's just no two ways about it. So
I went through a whole period of calling guns overpriced noisemakers, and like people which is what they are, but overpriced noisemakers. And I'll be like, and then that year happened where just after the lockdown, everyone had fireworks. Remember? You couldn't sleep. Yeah, you remember. It was everywhere.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, you couldn't sleep. And I was just thinking about, is this what conservative dreams sound like?
First of all, please don't attach fireworks to conservatism. We all love fireworks. It's like saying only black people like watermelon. I mean, we all like, come on, or fried chicken.
I don't like fireworks. I don't like fireworks, actually.
All right. Good amount of us. To be fair, not all. You're right.
Genuinely, don't get me wrong. I'm always just like, ooh, but after like the third one, I'm like, we can go now.
All right. Yeah. I mean, even though when I hear you say it, it's completely reasonable. There's that part of me that was raised here. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Get out of the country now. Leave. No, you make some sense, but yeah.
Can we get our country back to the line where it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Greg, I don't want you to go anywhere, but the line was fireworks. Can we get our country at least back to that line?
Can we all get around blowing some fucking fireworks?
Like, come on, summertime. And the funny part was that summer was the summer Sarah and I moved to Lynn, and Greg was right. It was like not to say Brighton didn't do this, but like every single night it was straight up 4th of July fireworks.
Every night.
Oh,
but the funny part is I felt like there was almost an agreement with the local police because it always shut down at the right time. I mean, not at the right time, at like a certain time every single night, no matter what. It's not like they ran out of fireworks because literally they were back at it the next day for the entire summer.
Yeah, same in my neighborhood too. So like that was clearly,
I kind of felt like that's how it was back in the day when we were growing up. Like I felt like fireworks were just like, someone had a batch that they went up to New Hampshire for. Went up to Hampton Beach Kid, got some fucking fireworks, or that cousin who just got back from Florida, got a carton of cigarettes and some fucking fireworks, and
just got out of jail, more like it.
Probably, but I didn't say why he was in Florida. I just say he just got back. That one friend who had the one M80 that's been under his bed for like a good 6 years. This is the summer, guys.
Dude,
this is the summer we do it.
Dude, this is an M80. It's a quarter stick of dynamite, kid. You know that. You can't hold that.
This is the summer.
Pull your fucking fingers off.
My parents are going away. We're doing it.
Like Jean-Pierre Paul.
Fingers.
Well, Star Child, we know how you feel about fireworks, but other than that, are you looking forward to you've got the 4th of July shindig going on. For a man who doesn't like fireworks, you got it all together.
The fireworks, I mean, it starts like popping off around us randomly at about 9 or 10 o'clock. So we don't even have to go to the Esplanade. Like it's just gonna go down. So I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I love me some Meica. I think on principle and on paper, it's been a massive success. And so I think I fully respect the attempt. So whereas I can't say good job, America, I could say good try, America. And I think that definitely merits a barbecue. I think, we can grill for that. Like we had so much potential. Like it was honestly sexy. It was never great, but it was always an attempt. And I think, if I can give a little quote about our great nation, we pursued the truth. In no part of that does it say we found it. If anything, anytime we got close to it, we ran screaming in the opposite direction. So,
I do like how you just proposed that the barbecue is the participation trophy.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
all it is. That's all it is.
The participation trophy of Free Nations is in fact the barbecue and the fireworks. So
because especially because we're at the point where all the other things that are, air quotes American, that you have to participate in make you feel a little queasy these days. Like you just can't help it. But you know what? That's the beauty of the grilling. It's the beauty of the grilling, because you can make up your own reason for being out there, or no reason at all. Yeah.
I'm gonna participate in the smoking and the grilling, and I've got a brisket, so I get to bring a little of my heritage to a little American heritage and Southern barbecue. Like, that's where I just feel the people really come together.
There you go.
Brisket, right? That's the type of thing. It's a very Jewish thing for sure.
Seared meat. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very Jewish thing. And then yet it worked its way into barbecue too. And it's like considered one of the harder things to smoke and do it just right and all of that. And the booby, so I bring a little of my stuff. I bring a little everybody else's stuff. That's America, baby. Right. And brisket just, that's our new melting pot, is the rendered fat off the brisket. And my personal secret, a cup of black coffee in the middle of it, and you wrap it up in some tin foil. Keeps the meat moist, booby. Just tell
you hear that, fans? Did you hear that?
I just gave away my top secret right there. But gives it just the right little acidity flavor. Perfecto. But
and there it is.
All right. As you can tell, we're working hard here, and we're trying like hell to make you laugh through these days, which, some of us laugh easier, some of us laugh harder, depending on where you're sitting. But we want to, still keep the good times rolling and still keep the laughs coming. So we did decide, even though it was tempting, I almost thought we could do an entire episode on Megaforce. I mean, if we're talking about blowing shit up, including, bombing at the box office, I thought a whole Megaforce episode, but felt like a stretch. So in our, usual back and forth, we decided that we wanted to talk about our favorite comedians today, because, laughter is always the best medicine, is always just the way to get us through and the way to keep us together, and just try and keep us going through our summer of love, discontent, whatever the heck it may be. So I admittedly I had a topical bit that sort of sparked this and something that brought this to me, but the steam gentlemen, as always, are there and down for the ride and ready to bring that steam. So with that, I want to turn to Greg, who wanted to lead us off today in the leadoff position there. He's gonna get at least a single, if not a double, if I know him right off the bat. Probably still third, right? Once he gets there, he's the type to take a big
too.
That's it, right? I'm going to start off with a mild kick in the nuts for us, but some 30 years ago in 1992.
Jesus, really, dude?
Yeah, it's been 30 years. Yeah, 1992.
Get a mild kick in the nuts, dude.
That was good. Dude, that was a good year. Get over yourself.
Yeah,
it was a good year, but like Greg
back.
took 2 steps back and got a running start, and then just fucking launched it toe right up into the taint with that one.
30 years ago.
Some of us weren't born in the 70s.
And in 1992, Russell Simmons and HBO got together to give us a show called Def Comedy Jam. Def Comedy Jam was the shit. All right. Like you were, I was still in middle school at the time. I didn't have cable. My friend did. And we used to go by his place and we used to watch Def Comedy Jam. Now, in that happy little window in between, Eddie Murphy Raw and what's the name? Original Kings of Comedy, let's say, in between those two things. Basically Def Comedy Jam kind of owned that little period in comedy. You know what I mean? Like you really couldn't say, obviously In Living Color and other shows started popping up. There was like a heyday of black sitcoms. But if you wanted to see the good ratchet shit, you went to Def Comedy Jam. And I mean, it was incredible. And you didn't think about, like, these people having, massive futures or anything like that, unfortunately. But a good amount of them, a lot of the comedians that we are established today, started on Def Comedy Jam. What was so special about it was because it was urban and honest about the African American experience. It was excellent. It was excellent. You know what I mean? Like, you started off. First of all, it was very, very hip hop. It was filmed, I think, in Harlem. I think in New York City, in Harlem, and it was kind of the big screen version of the Apollo. The Apollo had a show too, but Def Comedy Jam was just a black audience and black comedians mostly talking shit about black people, but that's okay because that was that brand of comedy. And honestly, it was excellent. It was excellent. I think Martin Lawrence was the host for a good long while. I'm pretty sure he was the. Was that?
I think he was. Yes, I was.
Yeah,
concurring.
He was, and went to Joe Torre.
Yeah, Joe Torre, right? And I had so many people: Dave Chappelle, D.L. Hughley, what's the name? Bernie Mac was on it. Patrice O'Neill was on it, and Dave Chappelle. Chris Tucker was on it, and all of these people started perfecting that signature style, and it was hilarious. I loved it because it wasn't until Def Comedy Jam that you really saw like a new generation of black comics coming up with their own way of saying, and it was clever. Like, it wasn't just people talking shit about black people. Like, it kind of got a reputation for just having like that, generic comedy line where it'll be like, white people do this, but black people do this. And it was kind of like back and forth. It's like, no, it was honestly smart, nuanced comedy that you had to appreciate and you had to understand the culture to really get into, because you a young black kid, like, you kind of want to see, the way we talk shit kind of put on a national stage, like that was basically you and your boys, like just standing around, just running jokes and just going on. And a lot of it, that spirit, you saw it in the Def Comedy Jam. So it was, dare I say it, empowering. That also got a bad reputation for not having too many female comics. I mean, that is absolutely true. There's not much you can do about that. I can only think of, Adele Givens was on there a couple of times. I know that for a fact. Was Monique ever on it? Not sure if Monique was ever on.
Yeah. Maybe near the end.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, to your earlier point, I was going to say it's after, but to your earlier point, almost every single entity that now from black comedy started Def Comedy Jam. So that's almost
easily. I said that.
Well, I'm saying like the women. So like Monique, there's a lot of talk show hosts that started on Def Comedy Jam. Basically everyone was on it, including women.
Like there was a wide. So that's why I just gave a short list, because I wrote like a bunch of names down, but there's so many. And the thing that got you, especially being a high school kid, it was like, this was your thing. You know what I mean? Like, by that point, everybody was still kind of going on about, the Eddie Murphy run on Saturday Night Live. People were still, talking like Richard Pryor was still the most groundbreaking comic. And don't get me wrong, he was. But for our generation, like these were our comics. You know what I mean? Bernie Mac, like that was our comic. I think what's the name? Bill Bellamy was on it. Like those are our comics. And even like I said, Bernie Mac, but Cedric the Entertainer, the guys who ended up doing the original Kings of Comedy, those are our comics. And Chris Rock. All right, I always thought of Chris Rock as basically just Black Gilbert Gottfried. Like he just kind of has the voice and he's just loud. And would he even be as funny if it wasn't for that voice? I don't know. But that was the beginning of Chris Rock too. And not my favorite. not not my favorite. You know, that voice just kind of goes like an axe through your temple. But I honestly, like, you know, I gave it I gave it a watch because you couldn't help it. You know, I mean, same thing with Eddie Griffin. Eddie Griffin was another one. Like, he was just like this shifty little black dude, but he was funny as hell. And we got to say around that time, it's when Eddie Murphy was making most of his movies, you know. And so it was like, you know, you still have Red Fox around. And you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we grew up on fucking Sanford and Son. We love Red Fox. So what ended up happening was this kind of gave people an interest to look up old black comedy, because you never really heard Red Fox's stand up. You know, like, you remember him on Sanford and Son, but did you ever really see Red Fox's stand up? So it was like, no. So a lot of people started breaking out the 45s.
Oh yes.
If you don't know, look it up. Started breaking out the 45s and started going to like old black comedy. So, you know, between that and the beauty that was Harlem Nights, we're talking about generations of comics, right? The absolute beauty and genius and cinematic perfection that is Harlem Nights. That just sparked an interest, not just that generation of black comedy, but just all black comedy. Like, you just dove into all of the older comics that also inspired Eddie Murphy, and going all the way back to the 50s and the 60s. But the only place you could hear it was old 45s. You know, like, if you were going to listen to Dolomite, you had to get an album. You had to get an album. Like, nobody, my boy, his father had all of that his father had it all in a crate with his old dirty magazines. I'll never forget it. I was like, this is a man crate if I've ever seen one. All you're missing
to the man cave, the man crate.
Right, exactly. It's the man.
You're either
crate.
gonna laugh or fuck.
Right. You know, like, that was it. You know, so yeah, Def Comedy Jam was a cultural touchstone. I mean, all 8 seasons. I don't know if I could recommend all 8 seasons, but just go into YouTube, Def Comedy Jam, and then Comedian, and you'll be able to find just absolute jewels. And it was, honestly, I was not a big Saturday Night Live person. I liked Saturday Night Live, I mean, but yeah, I think I was a much bigger fan of Def Comedy Jam. 100% worth it.
Oh, my heart. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I mean, I felt very similar. It was definitely empowering. It was definitely Black and Proud moment. It was also part of that sort of hidden Black Renaissance that I talked about back a few episodes ago when we were talking about like decades through the Black experience in the 90s. I mean, yeah, Friday night was absolutely exciting just to get down to it. And to your point, I would, if I were to recommend anyone watching it, and it would be definitely a chosen crowd. It definitely would not be a blanket recommendation. I would say you want to go all the way up until the second to last season that Martin Lawrence hosted.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
I mean, my mind has had a paradigm shift from, as always, when Star Child gets up to the mic. But I don't think I'll ever see Chris Rock and never be able to not think Black Gilbert Gottfried after that.
he was Black Gilbert Gottfried.
Because I'll be honest, I love Chris Rock, and I think, like, I fell in love with him as an actor and comedian in I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, when he goes,
one rib.
How much?
Fuck, got changed for 100.
Got changed for 100. Fuck the cup. Just pour it in my hands. Right when he just had the sheer audacity right there. Fuck the cup. Just pour it in my hands. There, I don't know what it was, but he just, I absolutely thought he was, the best. You know, I also his song, and I'm putting it in bunny quotes, "No Sex in the Champagne Room."
Oh shit.
No sex in the champagne room. Yeah.
You know, young brother, if somebody steps on your shoes, let it slide. It's not worth
Josh,
dying over a pair of Pumas. It's, you know.
yeah, it's true. Josh, if it makes you feel any better, it's hard for me not to look at Chris Rock and not see Pookie. But
Yeah.
it's weird because it
yeah.
sort of made it hard for me to take him funny afterwards because I felt like he nailed Pookie. Like he literally, I see them almost as synonymous. So it's almost like not seeing Chris Rock become more and more famous and getting these movie roles and all that. It's like, oh, Pookie actually survived. He made it.
He did, and
He made it
I
after
never was
getting his
sure.
throat slit and dying in a building that exploded.
Yeah, and I was always wondered. I wondered if he was just that skinny at that point in his life, or if he actually dropped all that weight for that role. Because
He was that skinny.
Like I just remember him at one point. They're rehabbing him. You know, Ice-T and Judd. Judd. What the fuck is Judd? Wow, which Judd is it? Man? Nelson, thank you. I want to say Judd Hirsch, but I'm like, that's a Jewish guy, and that's not the guy I'm looking for right now. But Judd Nelson, Breakfast Club, not old Jewish guy from Taxi.
Yeah, rapey kid from Breakfast Club.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but yeah, there's a bit where they're rehabbing and he's running around with his shirt off, and he is just so skinny and all that. But yeah, well, great.
And you know, rest in peace to Bernie Mac and Robin Harris.
Yep.
And you know, Dolomite. You're with us right now, Dolomite. And
step all over my list. No, it's not enough. You talked about Def Comedy Jam. Why don't you come over to my list? Yeah, keep going.
There we go. I will say that I'm going to give a quick. You know, I'm about to take over and step up into my batting order here, but just a quick. Since you mentioned the original Kings of Comedy. I got to give a shout out to at least someone we've talked about amongst ourselves, if not on the show. And that is DJ Rob Schlegel, no less. I've told you guys about him. I've told you some stories about him back in the day, DJing our parties and really absolutely bringing it in every way, shape, or form and staying all night. And how Schlegel, who was about as skinny as Pookie, and way more Jewish than I am. And, you know, I remember leaving with the girl at the end of the night. It looked like the dude from Road Trip. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, right when I had sex with a woman. But DJ Rob Schlegel cut the trailer for the ended up being the editor on the trailer for the original Kings of Comedy. So that's how you saw it in the theaters and or in video or whatever.
So the real question, did he credit himself as DJ Rob Schlegel, or was he just did he drop the DJ? He probably dropped the DJ.
Dropped the DJ for that part. I gave him credit for that because, you know, back in the day,
it's like when Dwayne Johnson started to show up instead of The Rock.
Instead of The Rock, yeah. Right, but to my mind, he will always be DJ Rob Schlegel because of the fact that he's like, "Can I DJ your party?" And I'm like, "Really? Okay, sure." You know, like I said, skinny Jewish kid shows up, door fucking swings open. 5 guys come through ahead of him, stake the place out, start bringing in his vinyl, set the table up for him, and he sets up and spins for 2 hours and then proceeds to trade out with all of his entourage. Motherfucker had it on lockdown. Lockdown. Yeah. So, I mean, much though I may joke about him and all that, had just, you know, absolutely brought it.
Rob Schlegel.
All right. Well, you know, since we got the laughs going, I you know, it's very topical because right now the comedian I want to talk about does have a 2-part documentary going on HBO. But I really, you know, I really did think about him a lot, and I feel like, you know, I'm doing that. I'm doing a lot like in my own outlook and in my own approach to life. I feel so inspired by this man. You know, there's usually that feeling of being more conservative the older you get, and when you're younger, you're more avant-garde and liberal and out there, right? But this comedian sort of took the exact opposite approach to it. Interestingly enough, you can sum up his career in 7 words, right? You could there's absolutely no joke, and I'm going to tell you the 7 words he can sum up his career: shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. That indeed was the heavy 7 that no less my mother of all people played for me on his album, on his classic album, Class Clown. Yes, in fact, indeed, we're talking about George Carlin today, or at least that's what I wanted to bring to the table. Because he's such an interesting, study in not only the work of comedy, but the work of a life, of how one thinks and how one, typically changes. And then this man, I felt, went in the opposite direction of how most of us approach our lives, and that he got, I felt, riskier and really even took more chances, as well as was willing to say some shit that a lot of people don't want to say the older they get. The period of time I didn't know about him very much and didn't listen to him or didn't know about was his younger period of life, when he was the clean cut comedian. He didn't have a beard. He had a short hair. It was very interesting to see in this documentary too, going back to it, how comedians kind of used to work when they were doing the Ed Sullivan Show. They used to come in and they would do the skits, and they would set the skits up for the audience. It was very interesting in that regard. Like, it would be these pre-scripted ideas. It wasn't so much the idea of putting out philosophies, right? They would say, well, we're now in the press pool of President Kennedy, right? And I'm and here's a reporter asking a question of President, and then they would go in and do those types of things. And Carlin started off with that, and then he would, kind of say, well, here's a DJ now in the Midwest, and he would do his hippy dippy weatherman thing, right? He would kind of have this whole idea, bing bong, 5 minutes past the big hour, 5 o'clock, and he would set this whole kind of skit up and rolling, and it was funny, and it's cute, but it's kind of cute, and it is safe, and it's appropriate for the 50s and the early 60s when he's doing it. And then suddenly, this guy is he's traveling. He's out there with his wife. He's out there with his kid. He's on the road. He's really kind of working it hard. He always has these dreams of becoming an actor as well as a comedian. He wants to be like Danny Kaye, is how he kind of sees himself and all of that. But, firstly, he gets into mind expanding drugs for sure.
That's important.
He was always smoking weed. Like even back in the clean days, the clean cut days, he was still a big weed smoker. Like, that was just part of the deal. And that was also, even in those cleaner cut days, he was kind of joking, when he do jokes about the hippies, like, it was like, yeah, I'm really high as fuck right now. Right. And I just smoked a joint backstage, and here I am doing jokes about the hippies for all the clean cut folks. But, he saw more and more relevance to that outlook, of course, definitely started doing more and more drugs. So firstly, he starts to just challenge the order of things and the order of what's expected and what is expected of people and what is expected of propriety. Right. And he comes out and in the end actually teams with Flip Wilson, of all things, going back kind of the earlier, on the record label that precedes Def Comedy Jam, in the sense of there's no television, there's no HBO to get this out. And Flip is really willing to put a lot of different artists on these albums and do a lot of different things. And he produces Class Clown, which he then starts to take on the road, of course, right? He can do more explicit language on the road, but even that is a challenge to the time. The fact that he stands up there, right, and he sits there and he talks about these 7 words, and he kind of tries to delve into what they must do. He talk about they must be so terrible. These are the 7 words you can't say on television: shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. And he kind of goes through each one of them and makes the audience uncomfortable at the time, and plays around, with them, right? I still remember in that skit, he says, tits sounds more like it should be a nickname, right? Hey, tits, toots, tits, how you doing? Hey, right? And he talks about like the effect and how terrible these words must be, right? That will curve your spine, and lose the war for the Allies, which I just always love. And he starts, he's just saying, how is it? Like, is it the word? Is it the context of the word? He starts to, play with all of that. And it's very funny. It's shocking as hell at the time, and I still remember I can't have been much more than my youngest son's age listening to this album with my mother and dying laughing, mainly because of the explicit language. He's in the meantime is doing all kinds of comedy there. He talks about growing up Catholic, challenging his priest from Central America, Father Rivera, who doesn't speak English so well when he's trying to cut, and here he is challenging him with the philosophical thought of, is God so all powerful that he can make a rock so big that even he can't lift it? Right? It's like trying to give him these canonical curveballs. So, and in that he does get into a bit of a rut. He kind of becomes the word guy because he's always kind of, breaking down words and sort of the etymology of it, which is very funny. I mean, it's a high level of intelligence combined with the base language, right, that he is doing. And then, towards the end of the 80s, because of who he is, and he had fallen into a rut and other comedians are calling him out, he comes out and he reinvents himself again. And he comes out on fucking fire, right? And he starts talking about shit that is still considered controversial today, but he's saying the stuff that's going on right now in our faces. He's saying it in 1991. He is making it abundantly clear with his HBO special, right? He comes out and he talks about, well, we can't do anything else in America anymore, but we can sure as hell bomb the shit out of you. Right? It's like, and by the way, if you're a brown country, we're really going to bomb the shit out of you. Right? He says, when was the last time America bombed a white country? That was World War II, Germany. And you know why we bombed them? Because fuck you, that's our territory. Right? They were trying to move in on our scene. Fuck off. So he is just all of a sudden coming right out, talking about stuff. He talked about abortion. He didn't dance around it. He didn't sugarcoat it in any way, shape, or form, right? He gave you a philosophy, a counter philosophy to it, which we can, certainly view right now. And you can disagree with me as I'm saying, but he lays it out, right? He says abortion isn't about the babies, it's about control, right? He says they care about the babies right up until the time they're born, right? And after that, fuck you. Right? You're on your fucking own, right? Because if they cared about the babies, there'd be Head Start, there'd be school lunches, there'd be all these things. He goes down a whole list of all the things that if it was truly about babies, then we'd be talking about, right? But we're not. We're talking, we're talking about it up in there, and then it makes it about control. Again, you can disagree with him. You can disagree with me as I'm talking about him, but he had the balls to say it. And he was saying that as he was getting older. And yeah, as I'm getting older, as I've just taken my 48th trip around the sun, I felt he was right back then. And I feel he's doubly right now. And it's amazing to me. And it's very interesting to me to see a man who could not only do that, but could make himself a success while doing that. As I say, at a time when people generally, as they're aging, are going to play it safer and get more conservative. I'm putting that in the bunny quotes, however you want to put that, but just, be more afraid of saying something that's going to turn people off to you, and try and work it. So, it was just one of those things that I saw that, and I was like, well, goddamn, man, not bad, dude, not bad. I'll throw in the last quick story that I still just love, that Paul Reiser is in this documentary. I'd seen this story before. His sister, I guess, managed to interview him for her high school radio show, of all things, right? So this is Paul Reiser, and he says they're in New York where he lives, and he says, I gotta go. He's like, he excuses himself from the interview, and he says, I gotta go uptown. And Paul Reiser's dad's like, well, where are you going? He's like, well, I'm gonna go buy a camera. And Paul Reiser's like, oh no, you don't want to go uptown to buy a camera. Come on with me to Queens. I'll introduce you to Saul. Right? And they go to Queens and they meet Saul and they buy this camera. He says, well, I guess he gets to meet him many years later, and he says, I remember you, and I was going uptown to buy cocaine. Right? And the next thing I know, I was in Queens buying a camera from Saul after your dad takes me around. To me, that's the most George Carlin story of all, but I'll hand it back over to the other esteemed gentleman here.
That was a pretty damned George Carlin story. I think of George Carlin only because whenever your average lovable huggable right winger goes on about how, oh man, you can't say anything today, like, oh, it's so PC, it's like, bitch, if George Carlin was around today saying what he would have to say about Bush and Trump and the direction of the country, you would have him dragged into the fucking street. Now, keep in mind these are the same Christians who would probably protest the Sermon on the Mount, but the idea that you would have a George Carlin, you would be totally okay with George Carlin being around today. Yeah, right. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, no. That's inaccurate.
Well, Bill Burr in that documentary talks about going to see him, and he knows him, and he knows him as the word guy, and then he goes to see him around that time. He's like, man, he came out with a bazooka, right? It's like this change. He was like, holy shit, what did I just say? But
I remember watching that HBO special when it came out, and at that point, because of my dad, I was already pretty familiar with him. And I was also familiar, weirdly enough, with sort of the downfall that he was starting to be under before the HBO special came out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said during that special has always stuck with me. I'm like, that's really more George Carlin than anyone actually wants to believe or think. And this is why I tend to side with his way of thinking. And it was what he said about the environment and the earth, in the sense of like, yeah, we can all be upset and concerned and all that good stuff, but I hate to tell you people, the earth has already been through things 10 times worse than anything a human being could ever figure out and do to it. The earth is going to be fine. Us, on the other hand, we're fucked. And I remember even at the age of 12, watching that and hearing that, I'm like, God damn, he's right. Like we don't have a shot. And weirdly enough, it's people like that I sort of attribute where I've always been the opposite of what you talked about, Josh. I probably started off way more conservative in my thoughts and my approach to things and my beliefs. And because of people like George Carlin on top of family members, I did what people like George Carlin would say, which is ultimately expand your mind. You can disagree, but at the same time, expand your mind. I always felt his whole point about 7 words is basically like, I get if you are offended, but what actually is stopping you from either A, walking away, or B, just kind of forgetting about it, and did it do the damage that you're putting the energy in to stop me from saying it?
And it's fast. I love that you brought that up. I loved that joke at the time, and it made me laugh. It's still, and that's the whole thing, is how prescient he was, right? In that special, he talked about abortion. He talked about the environment, all these things that are like right on the front burner again today, that we're coming just off of that, of the Supreme Court. And he had a Supreme Court decision that was based around those 7 words that you're talking about, that went to it and made it say, because that his album had been played on the air. And that was the court decision that said, well, if it's that made it to the FCC, said you can't say this anymore, like made it official canon, if you will, made it actual law. So it's amazing to me that, and I totally hear you, totally support you, and feel the same, that I felt I was much more conservative in my youth, and that as I've gone along now, I seeing that special started to wake me up to a different way of thinking. And yeah, the older I get, the more I'm like, no, everything you fucking said was really true, really frighteningly so, and just absolutely dead on. So that's my little tip of the cap to that man. So, as speaking of tip of the cap and handing over the talking stick, let me hand over that talking stick to the 3 clubs. Let's see what he brings to the comedy discussion today.
In honor of the upcoming 4th of July, I would like to start with following historical quote. I'm going to rise up, going to kick a little ass, going to kick some ass in the USA, going to climb a mountain, going to sew a flag, going to fly an eagle, I'm going to kick some butt, I'm going to drive a big truck, I'm going to rule this world, I'm going to kick some ass, going to rise up, going to kick a little ass, rock, flag, eagle. I start with that because 4th of July, happy 4th for, the rest of America who already had their freedom before some of us on Juneteenth. But, let's blow some shit up, like I said, and eat some processed food because, similar to how I feel about Christmas, I feel like this holiday is way away from what it originally was supposed to be. So it might as well just be shared by everyone on the basis of levels. Also, quick funny story with fireworks. When I was growing up, there was a few moments where my mom definitely was basically like, I give up, whatever happens to these fuckers, including my dad. She's like, yeah, toss the dice. And we came back from a long ass road trip. It was like 1:00 at night when we finally got home. And because part of the road trip was in the South, we got some fireworks. Fuck yeah. And it was after the 4th of July, but still, summer. So fireworks season. And my brother, my dad, and I proceeded at 1:00 in the morning to shoot bottle rockets at each other. And I remember my mom starting to try to stop it, but then she's like, fuck it. I actually don't care what happens to any of the three of them. But anyway, so why did I start with that quote other than to go off on a weird family tangent? And of course, my family is going to factor back into this. But one, I always felt like comedy was a way of identifying other parts of your kin. There's kin that are skin folk, but then there's kin that are really part of your fabric, even if you've never met them before, even if you come from completely different areas and experiences and backgrounds, all that good stuff. Things that you laugh at, to me, is a way of, bringing us together and identifying, hey, we can be different, but actually we can see things very similar. Because when you break down comedy, that's really actually what it is. That's the reason why the ancient Greeks looked at comedy really as a duo approach to understanding life. It was both funny and tragic. But, when you take comedians who are also some of my favorite types of artists because they're such tortured souls, most comedians, I would argue the vast majority of them, part of the reason why they're funny is because they look at the world through such dark lenses. They are complete miserable individuals. They are not fun to be around. Some of them are really sick in the head. So it's not even surprising when you see some of the adverse behaviors that come out of it. A lot of them, and then when I say sick in the head, I don't mean it in a derogatory way. So I apologize, but in the sense of a lot of them have so many different unchecked traumas that in one side fuels their funny views about things, but on the other side fuels their destructive behavior. And unfortunately, it gets ahead of people. It reminds me of icons that I grew up around, to the point where up until around like 4 or 5, I actually thought Richard Pryor and people like him were part of my family. Because when Richard Pryor caught fire in 1980, and then when he finally recovered and came back, I remember the way my dad and my uncles and all, like their running crew, would talk about it in the sense of like, damn, I hope Uncle Richard is going to be okay. I feel like it's fine. And I bring that up in the sense of like the tortured soul part of like his destructive behavior on one side led to his meteoric rise, a rise that even icons that are before him basically said, if you don't clean this up, you're not going to go far. But because he had such a fire inside that eventually became the fire outside of him, he was able to reach iconic legendary status in a way that people to this day still attribute their success to people like him, and for hopefully people even think past Richard Pryor to the other people that influence him, like your Dick Gregory's. But the whole idea is like these artists, most comedians across the board, are completely tortured souls, and like I said, fuels their comedy and also fuels, unfortunately, their life. And also when you break down the life of a comedian, Josh just talked about it in the sense of how a family man did it in basically the late 60s, early 70s. That was kind of the last of it, because really before that and throughout that time and even now, most of these comedians, part of the reason why I would argue they have such an adverse look at life that we will eventually laugh at. But when you break down their life, most of them are basically living opposite of what the human being experiences. They're doing nightclubs and staying up super late, and basically their day is like 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. And by the time they have to get some rest, the rest of the world is existing. They have to stay up and eat horrible things and probably fuel themselves with alcohol and drugs and all these different things. It's part of the reason why I also thought when I was growing up that, yeah, a comedian had a low life expectancy, because coming up in the 80s, and as my friends can join in, coming up in the late 70s, I'll give you guys some credit, mid 70s, 70s, and 80s. We grew up and we had to say goodbye to a lot of comedians, to the point where I actually thought, if you're a comedian, you're basically guaranteed to die early. Staying close to my family in the sense of, I remember when Robin Harris passed away. You would have thought an uncle passed away in my family, the way we were really hurt and upset. And then same thing when, like, on the flip side, and this is why I started with the understanding of whoever's laughing, it's kind of your kin, whether you realize it or not. When Sam Kinison died, I remember my dad was pretty upset. And then you go walking down the street and you're listening to some old crotchety white guy has no life experience connected to you or your dad, and you overhear him being upset. It's like, all right, so we both were laughing at the same thing. We actually have something that bridges us together. And I think that has a way of doing it with comedy. Unfortunately, like I said, there's a low life expectancy. And yes, there are icons who somehow made it to, later parts of their life. Talked about prior, but he actually died in 2005, which same year one of my favorite comedians I'm about to talk about died. But you also had Dangerfield died during that time. He made a decent amount of time. Fun story about Dangerfield. Dangerfield actually told Eddie Murphy in the beginning of his career that he needs to clean. He was also a clean things up type of guy. Now, to be fair to guys like Dangerfield, they obviously didn't understand how race dynamics work, because not exactly growing up in the time that they taught it. This is what our future might look like. But also in the sense of, he also knew of comedians who were able to be successful without being vulgar. And he's probably looking at Eddie Murphy in the sense of, I knew a black guy that did it. He didn't know his hobbies, but he's like, I knew a black guy that did it. And he was probably, thinking of Bill Cosby. So yeah, funny thing, Rodney Dangerfield actually tried to tell Eddie Murphy, don't be vulgar. Eddie Murphy responded in kind by telling him to fuck off. And then he proceeded to have one of the most successful careers any comedian, or frankly, actor, could ever wish for. But back to the people that passed away that sort of connects us. Like in my lifetime, it's Farley, it's Candy. Rest in peace to Phil Hartman. It's Ritter. Flip Wilson actually died during our time, and I remember the rainbow of people who were upset about it. It wasn't all just black people. There were white people, there were Latinos, there were Asians. A lot of people were upset about that. We just said goodbye to Bob Saget, the quote unquote comedian's comedian. That's the other part about being a comedian that I love so much, which leads me to the two guys that actually made me really want to talk about comedians when we had to at least pick something, because Josh is a stickler for, specifics and, details. But
it's always one.
So the first one is, I'm going to defend this guy. His first two albums were absolutely destroyers. Anyone who says otherwise, you're lying. And also, like I said, when we laugh, we're connecting ourselves and we're finding other kin. Dane Cook's first two albums, Josh's Neighbor, his first two albums,
Massachusetts own.
Yeah, well, Arlington's own. I don't give a shit who you are, but you're lying to yourself if you said you actually listened to those two albums. So those first two albums, and then laugh. There are things that still hold up to this day. Matter of fact, don't be surprised if you ever overhear me call my wife a twat and her look at me and say, I don't even like jelly. Like, that is how hard that shit stuck with us, to the point where, like, people over here and they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Looking at me. And Sarah has to step in and be like, no, hold on. But then I'm going to conclude it. I'm going to wrap it up. We're actually around 10 minutes. I can't believe I'm going to do this. But if someone ever says to you, I hear music, and your thought process or your response is, and you're not special, that's how I get music too, then you and I are kin. And that's because one of our favorite comedians who also passed away in 2005, Mitch Hedberg, The man was a genius. He looked at things and he said things and he explained things in a way that frankly sung to my soul. It didn't speak to my soul, it sung to my soul. And here I am, a person who has no sort of personal connection, no background connection, no nothing to this individual, yet almost everything that he talked about and the way he approached it, especially as he, sort of got clean, because unfortunately, like the comedians I talked about and the underlying theme of everything I talked about, living a lifestyle that unfortunately got a hold of them faster than their career could really take off. But Mitch Hedberg, man, if you need to understand subversive comedy, you need to start with that guy.
Hear, hear.
All right. I'll try to listen to some Mitch Hedberg.
It's well worth it. It definitely is, and RaShaun, you touched on something that we could probably do a second episode on, which is you're right. That so many comedians as well also are known to have depression and the dark side, right? That drives them towards the comedy. I was pointing out Carlin, who was no exception. I mean, he managed to stay married. He managed to be a family man, but it was a rough marriage. It was rough because, as you said, he was out on the road. There was a lot of drugs. She had problems with alcohol, and interviews with his daughter. Stuff was not easy. And you point out Richard Pryor, an absolute genius. And there was a time where Carlin and Pryor were on a variety show together. And I saw some footage of that. And it's a fucking masterclass in comedy. Like, they would ask them sort of questions and have them be funny together. Holy shit, was that funny, right?
Absolutely.
So and also Carlin, when he hosted the Tonight Show, said, for those of you watching the comedy sweepstakes, I've had 2 heart attacks. Richard Pryor has had 1 heart attack and set himself on fire. So just, there was even the kinship there, right? These were guys who were working the same clubs and doing all that stuff and living much of the same life. So
absolutely. And talking about, who's really your kin out there that ain't blood folk. If anyone says stare like motherfucking coffee, I know that you are an original Bernie Mac fan. Rest in peace. And also back to my man Mitch. Literally, there are times where I'm at a restaurant and they're calling for a party. And all I'm thinking when the party doesn't show up is like, how can anyone eat at a time like this? You fucking heartless bastards. There are people missing, and we're all just gonna go and proceed and eat. Thanks to one of Mitch's best fucking parts of his routine. But yeah, these comedians, everyone we talked about, definitely, if you're laughing at that, you're our folk. You're part of the esteemed gentleman.
Heard that.
Oh, Greg, didn't know if you had any follow-up there. Just didn't want to step on you.
Oh, not at all. I mean, I was a good rundown of just comedian life. I don't know if we could say that was like the heyday. It's like those 3 decades of being a comic. I mean, it just kind of like, the way you put it is just kind of made me feel like, yeah, it was an explosion. It was like the comedy renaissance,
Very rich period.
Like and all the comedians,
a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you were a stand-up comedian, you got a sitcom. A lot of, everybody was leaving SNL to go do movies of varying degrees of success, but and quality, but it really was like it was a comedy renaissance.
I as I'll lead us out here, and we'll do the outro soon, but I do want to, you can call me a virtue signaling motherfucker. I got no problem with that, but I do want to give a shout out also today in the now, because we're starting to put some birthdays on, so we rightfully so are looking back at that, as you say, like a renaissance of comedy. Got to give a shout out to some of the women of comedy nowadays. They are really making me laugh. Incredibly smart, and also body and all the humor, right? All of my YouTube right now is Taylor Tomlinson, right? If you haven't seen her, go YouTube her, go to Netflix. that shit's funny, right? This girl was raised in a very conservative Christian family, suffered from bipolar disorder, you know, and we'll talk about that in her comedy, right? You know, talk about going to her dad and was like, you know, she's like, I was having a nervous breakdown. I was having thoughts of self-harm. And my dad's like, you know, whenever you feel that way, you've got to go and get as far away from the people you care about and just separate yourself.
Because
like, that's advice you give a werewolf. What the fuck are you talking about? Right?
No, because, you know, I focused on, you know, like Def Comedy Jam and Def Comedy. They weren't too many women. It was like Ellen Cleghorn and maybe like one or two others. But yeah, absolutely. Fuck ton of female comedians. I mean, you can go all the way back to like the, you know, Carol Burnett.
Yes.
All the way, you're right. You know what I mean?
We can do a follow-up episode, and I think it's entirely possible, but I did want to steer people to their YouTube, to their Netflix, because I do feel right now is a bit of a renaissance. You know, I just feel like a lot of women are getting a lot of forward exposure, especially in the stand-up comedy realm, which, you know, it's happened before too. Yes. But I just feel there's a lot of strong, really funny shit out there right now. There's
a lot of there's a lot of people right now who are walking around thinking Whoopi Goldberg just somehow became famous.
Right.
Or that Ellen just somehow had a TV show this entire time. And to be fair, if you're like 25 and under, I can understand why that's your point of view. For right or wrong, and I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about the host of the show and the creator and the producer, but for right or wrong, to your point, Josh, if people really want to like dig in and find some awesome female comedians, watch YouTube at midnight, because literally it was like the who's who of the last 10 years of who's been, well, not the last since it went out like 5 years ago. So from like 2005, 2015, I feel like it was like sort of a who's who of comedians. And a lot of them were women, and definitely exposed. And literally, that's where the first time I saw Tiffany Haddish.
Oh, yeah. That's, you know,
amongst many people.
There's a lot of good. There's still a lot of good stuff out there. I mean, and goddamn, we need to laugh right now. So, you know, go out there, people. It's good for your brain, honestly. Even having the day I had coming into our proverbial studio, I just was glad to sit around with you guys and just get those happy chemicals going in my brain just a little bit from laughing.
To your point, Josh, if I may, real fast before we do our outros.
Oh, yeah.
One, look, people, laugh at whatever the fuck you want to laugh at, and comedians say whatever the fuck you want to. I actually don't really care. Here's the problem. You also can be upset if someone doesn't agree with that point of view and gives you their feedback back. If you got the balls to say it, or the tits to say it, however you want to do it, which, side note, talking about growth, I did have a friend who we nicknamed Tits, and I grew to understand how bad that is. Although in my head, to be fair, I'm like, if she called me balls, I wouldn't care. But anyway, laugh at what you want to, comedians say what you want to. Getting feedback back from people that you're making fun of isn't being canceled. That's just you hearing the fucking results of your goddamn words.
Yeah, there's that. And, you know, just if you're punching down, you know, be cognizant of it. That's maybe when people really, you know, there's a couple simple rules in comedy: punch up, punch down. I'm not saying I've never laughed at a joke that punched down, but, you know, maybe it's not as funny years later, right?
Yeah.
It does happen. And the older I get, maybe that's less funny than the joke that punched up, right? I'm talking about Carlin because he punched up every fucking time, right? He punched way up.
Most of the time. I mean, like everyone, if you go through all their catalog, you're going to find shit.
You're going to find it. You're going to find some there now and again.
No, but that's kind of the point I've been making the last couple of weeks. We need growth, humans. We need growth. You can fuck up, just grow.
Well, with that, we're out here growing together, trying on that. RaShaun, have you got plans on this 4th of July weekend there? Got a 3 of clubs fireworks display you're going to put on?
No one's going to trust me around things that explode. I barely made out of middle school. But with that said, I would like to spend a quick second of my outro. One, wish everyone a happy 4th. Please be safe, blow some shit up, eat some processed food, you know, get how did Tom Brady say it? Lubricated. You know, do all the good stuff, but please be good to each other. But also a quick shout out to Sinbad, because during the time that we talked about, Sinbad actually was a return to comedians that didn't have to swear or be overly vulgar to make you laugh. And I watched pretty much all his comedy specials. Sinbad's not dead, by the way, just in case you guys are going to research it. But my man was able to make you laugh without actually cursing too much. I think he might have cursed like here and there. But shout out to Sinbad, who's still alive.
Completely random brush with fame. I had dinner next to him at a California Pizza Chicken in Woodland Hills and outside of LA once. Just because he came in with his family to have California Pizza Chicken. Go figure. Star Child, what you got going on to make you laugh? Well, I know you got your 4th of July, absolute extravaganza down there.
I wouldn't call it extravaganza, but there will be drinks, there will be meat, and there will be America and fire and all those good things. Wishing everybody a happy 4th. Enjoy, however you do it. Do you spend most of the time fighting? Well, that would be traditional too. If you spend most of your time just eating and drinking, and what's more American than that? By all means, consume. If I can drop a couple real quick, if you don't know much about the great Paul Mooney, go ahead and help yourself to some Paul Mooney. He does use backwards and he does use racial slurs, but the man is genius.
Yeah,
he is genius, and as direct as a heart attack and serious as cancer when he wants to be. And a documentary I got to recommend: the one and only Dick Gregory. If you haven't seen the one and only Dick Gregory, I think it's on Showtime. Check it out. It's absolutely brilliant. I think it's about 2.5 hours, and it's brilliant. And Dick Gregory was brilliant. So, happy 4th.
Fantastic. I got a brisket downstairs. I got to trim it up. I'm not going to quite get it to competition level, but I'll take a little of the fat off and let a little of that fat render down. And, this is, if we're talking about growth, this is, where I feel, where Jewish food, little soul food come together. You know what I'm saying?
Got those colored greens.
There you go. Yeah. Goddamn autocorrect. I do.
Sure. Autocorrect.
Autocorrect. It's that's it.
Just do me a favor. Never send us a text about the Niger River.
No, that's gonna get no.
Never do that.
No.
Or Niger, the country.
The country. I'm just
leave it all alone. Just give us the longitude and latitude. And we'll go from there.
What country are you talking about? I have no idea.
No, because if his phone autocorrects to the N-word, then that means he told it to save it. So why the fuck would he tell his phone to save? I will
say that I don't tell my phone to save any of those.
Take it from somebody who's definitely texted people that word before.
Okay. And
it doesn't automatically autocorrect to that, even for me.
I can promise you that my phone will not automatically autocorrect to that.
Yeah,
Josh does a spell check though. He just talks into his phone. That's how he texts. So I'm just saying, God forbid Siri. God forbid Siri picks up on something different.
Siri,
it's still gonna go to bigger. Trust me. It's gonna go to bigger.
Okay, Siri's a racist bitch. I'm saying that right fucking now. I am absolutely saying Siri's in the clan. And when you come home, but nevertheless,
automatic sinks and automatic towels are, because fuck me if I can get it to work the first few times.
Fair enough.
I don't even exist to it. I'm looking at the guy next to me like, you mind just give me some soap?
So
just run your hand under this real fast.
Please. Fuck the cup, just put it in my hands. All right.
One rib. Full circle.
Full circle. That's it. Bring it back home. Well, if you can on this 4th of July, swing around to us and do your American patriotic duty. Like us on Facebook at the Steam Gentleman Podcast. Follow us on the gram at Do You Even Steam Bro. Tweet to us on the Twitter, such as it is, until Elon Musk crushes us all at the Steam Bros. Follow us all on all the socials. Have a little fun. And make sure to check out, if this is your first time joining us, check out, we got over 50 episodes now that you can go back and listen to and enjoy. You can hear our evolution and our growing as we go along. We are out. We are heading towards our various fun on this 4th of July weekend. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us and hopefully having a laugh with us because, yeah, shit, man. I need some laughs these days, and I think you do too. But till then, it is I, Josh, the Birdman, telling you to keep your heat up and keep your head of steam on.